Hey, what's happening? Mike Schmidt, 40-year-old boy podcast. A little different, I know, with no opening music. I'm coming at you cold, coming at you dry, as we call in the business. No cold open or no theme song or however you want to term it. I guess the theme song is a cold opener. I guess no, technically it's not. A cold open is before the theme song. That would be like, well, actually, I guess this is a cold open. Hold on a second. Let me double back and go ahead and talk about show business some more, because I don't know if you're aware of this. I have a fingernail in show business. I used to think I had a pinky in show business. Now I barely have a fingernail in, but it's enough for me to know that as I talk about this and I hear myself out, that this is a cold open without a theme song. It is also a show I've avoided doing. I didn't want to do this show this week. I didn't. So that's why we're doing this Wednesday night. I tried Monday. Well, fuck no, that's even a lie. I didn't try. I mean, in my brain, I kept telling myself to do it. Last week's show was late, and I apologize for that. But this week, Monday, I was like, all right, you got to do a show. But after I had a weekend that made me not want to talk, made me not want to do a show, made me not want to do this show in particular. But you gotta, because you're an adult. I'm 51 years old, and you process things and you deal with them and you work your way through. I guess I'm lucky in a way to have this platform, and I hope it doesn't come off as indulgent. You guys have been very cool, and you're always there for me when I have good things, bad things, and I don't want this won't turn into some maudlin festival. Mainly because there's only one person here. I can't see a festival happening with just one guy. That's not a festival. That's a one-man show, and that's what we've got going here. I didn't want to do the show. I avoided it, and I know you're thinking, well, what's different about that, buddy? You do it all the fucking time. Well, no, I've done a pretty good job of wrangling myself before last week, and it's. As you get older, just time flies so fast. It just goes by, and it seems like Wednesday's here again. It just happened. I didn't expect it, and I spent a lot of the last 5 days overwhelmed. And I didn't think I would be, but I was. And also that comes from not having anyone. I can reach out, I can call people, I suppose, and I walked outside, I felt the sun on my face, I threw cold water in my face. All things to register that you're still functioning, you're okay, even though you're not on the inside. And again, and I'm not trying to trivialize. It's funny when you talk about these things, you wind up getting into your own brain and going, well, are you, is this performative? Is this something that's constructive? I avoided doing a lot of this online because I don't see the point in doing a lot of this online anymore. And I know for some people it's cathartic and they want to do this sort of thing online. And fuck, who am I kidding? I'm doing this now, which is essentially my version of online. This is my own, I'm human Facebook right now. This is me. This is my Facebook post. This is my tweet. This is my Instagram story. And I'm lucky enough to have brought it to you for the last 11 years, through good and through bad. We dealt with a lot of different things, but the last 5 days were certainly tough and a challenge, and I didn't want to do this show. But as I said, you do things, and like I said, I'm not going to turn it into a big boo-hoo fucking festival. Although it might, who knows? I don't. Maybe I'm avoiding talking about what I want to talk about. Can you tell? Can you tell right now? I probably should have just had a fucking theme song in here. If anything, just to take the edge off for 35 seconds or 40 seconds or however long it is. But I'll recap. And it's funny. I always think, again, I see things through the prism of Facebook, or I see things through the prism of Twitch these days. When people are there and they see me and they hear me, and I got to realize that, again, this is job one. The podcast is where most people know me, and the podcast is where most people consume me and my product, and so I have to spell out why I'm. I've talked, I've avoided talking about the what I would call uncomfortable subject matter for long enough, and now, hey, here we go. Let's dive headlong into the thing I didn't want to talk about, things I didn't want to talk about, the stuff I didn't want to cover, the stuff I've been avoiding. like I said, a rough 5 days. And certainly more rough for other people. You know, again, I don't mean to, hey, look at me, this grief. There were certainly people who were closer to the subjects I'm going to discuss, but this is my show, and we deal with me and how I feel. Last Friday, I did a video game Twitch. You know, I do the Twitch stream. If you're not aware of that, I do it. And I was doing a Twitch stream on Friday afternoon, and I started at 3 o'clock. And usually, if you haven't been to the Twitch stream, here's what happens. I tell people to show up at 3 because I'm going to be playing God of War or some nonsense, and then people show up at 3, and then I wind up talking to them on screen for like 30 minutes. There's usually a 30-minute preamble before I even play a video game, which I'm very lucky because the regulars are people who listen to this podcast and they want to hear from me and they enjoy me talking. But at the same time, there are new people who pop their head in and go, "Hey, look, Batman! Who the fuck is this guy? Why won't he shut up?" You know, that sort of thing. Where I'm sure they're just looking in, and they're not interested in me or the things that I have to say. They're coming to watch Batman do a somersault, and here's just me talking about fucking sandwiches, and they're like, "What the fuck is going on with this guy, man?" So, the preamble, whatever, the ramp up, whatever. I used to call this the ramp up on the show, but I would call it a preamble on Twitch because God knows language is important. So Friday, I'm on Twitch. And it's 3 o'clock. It's in the middle of the preamble. It's like 3:15. And I should say this. I talked about it on the podcast a little bit last week where I've been following very closely. You know, I'm a Philadelphia Phillies baseball fan. And they are trying to sign one of the best baseball players in the league, in the world. His name's Bryce Harper. And there were just snippets of news coming out every day. And none of them said anything that was true, as far as you know. It was just rumors. I mean, nothing confirmed anything. He didn't sign anywhere. But so it was just that thing where he might sign here. He might not sign here. He likes Philadelphia. He hates Philadelphia. He likes cheesesteak. Fuck cheesesteak. You know, a lot of that back and forth bullshit. But I immersed myself in it. And along with a fan of the show, Ruben, he and I will go back and forth a lot in the chat room of Twitch, and we'll talk about Bryce Harper. So it's this thing where I wind up attuned to it, and and it's just a constant thing. I check, first thing in the morning, I check the Phillies Twitter accounts to see where we're at. So I'm in the Twitch stream. And it's like 3:20, and I'm talking. I don't know what the again. I'm talking. I could be talking about anything in the fucking world. I don't know what I was discussing. And in the chat room, I'll see things in the chat room, and then I address them on microphone. You know, they can see me on screen, but I can see their chats. And so someone said, "Hey, Mike, have you been to Twitter?" I said, "I have not. Not since like a half hour before the show here." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, I had the Phillies sign Harper?" And everybody's like, "No, it's no big deal." I said, "Okay," and I started talking. And I believe a second person came, and I think it was Colette was my friend. She might have been the first person. And then another person wrote, "Hey Mike, have you seen Twitter?" And then I went, "All right, now you guys are just fucking with me." I mean, they didn't sign Harper, right? And everybody's like, "No, they didn't sign Harper, but don't worry about it." I'm like, "All right, well, don't fuck with me because I'm going to turn on Twitch because that's the thing. It's the Twitch usually takes minimum 4 hours, sometimes 5. Here's what I did Sunday. I did a 9.5-hour Twitter stream. And that was mainly because I didn't want to think about the real world at all on Sunday. It was the culmination of what was a bad weekend, which has turned into 5 weird days. So I saw that in the chat room. Like, I go, "Dude, don't fuck with me. If they sign Harper, you got to tell me." And I'm about to jump in here for like 4 hours or 5 hours, and I need to know. And I was teasing everybody, and then finally a third person, I think it was actually Ruben, and he was like, "Hey, have you seen Twitter?" And I went, "All right, fuck this. Now I'm checking. Now I got to find out what's going on." And they're like, "No, don't worry about it." I go, "No, bullshit. If they sign Harper, I have to fucking know." And I guess people wouldn't want to break it to me in the stream. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know. But I grabbed my phone and I signed in to Twitter, and I saw nothing about the Phillies up top, and I scrolled down, and so I go, "All right, well, and I went to trending topics, and I saw the name Brody Stevens, who's my friend. And immediately that thing happens in your brain where, if somebody's trending on Twitter, the first thing you think of is, well, they're dead. because it's always some celebrity. Whenever you see some odd celebrity, like if you open Twitter and Val Kilmer is trending, you're like, well, either he called somebody the N-word or he's dead. I mean, it's like you never ever trend on Twitter for a good thing. Nobody ever cures lupus and gets their name in the fucking the trending tweets. It's always because you got milkshake duck, then what the fuck? So I saw Brody's name, and like I said, Brody's my friend, and so I kind of froze, and I just tapped his name, and the first thing I saw was a tweet where somebody just went, "I can't fucking believe my friend is gone," and I looked at the phone, and I just went, and I went, "Oh no!" I think. I don't remember exactly what I did and in what order, but I know it knocked the fucking wind out of me for me to see that my friend had committed suicide. And I wasn't, I reacted to the phone. I was looking, I was reading, I was scrolling, and then in my brain there was something that went, "Hey, you're on television right now." And that was true, because when you're on Twitch, there's a camera on and people can see you. So I had, I didn't have a lot of people in the chat room, maybe 30. I'm not sure how many, 30 to 40. But it was enough people who were watching me react in real time to the death of my friend. And that was fucking bizarre. And then I said, "Oh no," and I don't recall what I said. But people were very kind in the chat room, and they said, "Look, if you need to stop this and go away, that's fine." And I probably should have, And look, let me say this. I'll get into this in a minute. I probably should have, just because it was just to educate myself. But also, if he's gone, he's gone. I mean, there's nothing I can do. And also, I should say again, Brody, not my best friend. My friend, a guy I knew, a guy I genuinely enjoyed, a guy I would see all the time, because he lived in my neighborhood. It's so weird to have a comedian that I saw more outside of comedy and clubs than to see him at work. I saw him at Starbucks all the time, because he went to the Starbucks at Laurel Canyon and Riverside, which is near my house. When I saw him there, I never, I didn't go in there. I wasn't a coffee drinker. But I would drive by and I'd see him sitting out there, and every time I did, I would roll the window down and I would just go, "Enjoy it!" And he would just look up and he'd go, "Schmidt!" Or he'd say, "Third base, Phillies." He would just say something dumb. You know what I mean? "Focus, Schmidt, traffic." And I mean, he would say something crazy. "Positive." He would just do his thing that he does. Or I'd see him at my Gelson's. That's my favorite thing, is that there, Gelson's is right across the street. So that Gelson's I would see him in, because I'd go get a sandwich in the deli or whatever. And you'd be walking through, and he'd just be like, "Potato chip aisle, Mike Schmidt, headlining." Just silliness, because that's who Brody was as a guy, outwardly. I mean, clearly inside there was so much going on. And if you saw his Comedy Central show, or you saw the HBO show, you saw that he was very naked about it. I mean, he had the breakdown in 2011, and I used to make the joke, because he went off his meds, and then he didn't sleep, I think, for 3 days, and he just went on this manic tweet run. And I think I said to Pardo at one point, I go, "Well, I knew Brody was really in trouble, because he was tweeting from the wrong Starbucks." Because he was up at one on Ventura Boulevard near Coldwater Canyon. And I was like, this is not him. Something's amiss if he's at the wrong fucking Starbucks. But I would see him, he'd walk, he would get his steps in. As a matter of fact, the last Periscope he ever did, he still used Periscope. What a fucking sweetheart. The last Periscope he ever did, you can find it online. I think someone tweeted it out, and he was walking through my neighborhood, getting his steps in. The same route I would walk if I were to walk from my house, if I wasn't so fat and lazy and I ever walked to my bank. Because my bank was right across the street from his Starbucks. So he was obviously walking there. But just a genuine person and a good guy. And so for me to see that, and then to see it live in front of everybody, it was awkward and strange. And it was awkward and strange for everybody. I mean, they were very kind and very nice, but, you're peeking in at what is essentially a private moment. And I could have handled it better. I was surprised, I was shocked, and I reacted the way I would have reacted if I was alone. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, fuck, dude, you're on camera here. You gotta fucking, what are you doing? And I could have signed off and I could have bailed, but instead I chose to tell some stories about Brody, and I'm gonna share, a couple. I'll show them. I think I told both of these on the air. But Brody was he was a guy. Here's the thing. It was funny. Graham Elwood posted something on Instagram. And it was a tweet from, it was like, you know what it was? It was Joe Madden of the Chicago Cubs. Because if you don't know anything about Brody, again, he was a comedian, but also he was a baseball player. That was his whole deal. He played at Arizona State, and he made friends with real baseball players, like guys who went on to coach in the majors. Here's who Brody is. Zelig, he would go to spring training and he would hang out in the bullpen and he would hang out with the Cubs because he was genuinely friends with them. They didn't look at him like, who's this fucking annoying comedian? No, he was such a good guy. An outwardly warm presence and a positive person that the Cubs liked having him around. There were guys who were his friends, and then there were other people who became his friends. I mean, he was friends with the whole team to the point where he actually rode in the 2016 World Series championship parade. He was on a float. And I love that he got to experience that. I can't imagine as an athlete who did not achieve all he wanted to athletically to be involved in something that was the pinnacle of his sport. Had to be beautiful. I never got to talk to him about it, and I regret it. Because again, that's 2016, and that's how long it had been since I saw my friend. Because I don't do clubs, I don't go out. I see him here. You know what I mean? I like I said, I would see him at Starbucks, or I'd see him at Gelson's. But at that point, you're just walking past one another. And also Brody was he wasn't exactly. He was very open about his situation on his shows, but it wasn't like you could look at him and have a long talk, and just go, hey, let's talk about you and your weird depression and what's going on and are you okay? And you just don't think to ask those things. At least I didn't. And I didn't then. I will now. But also at the same time, is that about me or about them? Because if you do that thing where you reach out to somebody and you're like, hey, man, I hope you're okay. Are you okay? What's going on? Are you depressed? Are you sad? That person might just look at you and say, what are you going to do for me? I got pills that are supposed to help me. What are you going to do? Because you always hear that thing, reach out to somebody, see something, say something. You reach out, and if you see somebody who's not feeling good or you want to go ahead and try to be there for them, well, I mean, sometimes people don't want you to be there for them. Sometimes people hide in their apartment. Sometimes people don't answer the door or the phone. Sometimes people go off their meds. And sometimes people do things that they shouldn't. Brody... So Graham posted the video of the manager of the Cubs, Joe Madden, at his press conference talking about the camp, and then he said, and our friend Brody. And then he talked about Brody for a good, minute and a half, talking about how it had devastated the team, and they were looking forward to him coming the next week and how upset they were to lose him. And Graham posted that video, and you don't. I knew Brody. I saw him at the grocery store, and I saw him in clubs, and I saw him crush in fucking clubs. But to see him spoken of on a national scale like that, in such glowing terms by somebody who wasn't really in his industry, it was amazing, and it made me feel great. But oh my God, also tremendously sad. So sad over the weekend. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I kept crying. And when I would think of him, or I would watch a clip of him, or I would see something, and it has to do with other things I'll talk about here on the show, but because again, just a weird 5 fucking days, a weird weekend. But I couldn't shake the feeling of this being such a loss, this being, Brody, he was beloved. And that's what I wrote on Graham's post. I just said, Jesus, can you think of anyone at all in our industry, in comedy, who is more universally loved than Brody Stevens? I can't. Because there are people who will, and look, there are people who are admired and there are people who are respected. And there's certainly big names who are very successful. But you'll always find catty people. You always find backstabbers. You always find somebody who has something bad to say. I mean, it's it's a catty industry. Fucking entertainment. We're all scrambling in one big fucking crab pile trying to get to the top. And bitterness can creep in if you don't get the thing that you wanted. I was jealous of Brody. I was. I recognize that has to do with me. That's my problem. Nothing Brody did. He worked hard. I mean, and when I say worked hard, I mean that's all he did. And I think, and now seeing what has happened, he did, his whole thing was based on positive push and positive energy and pushing forward. I think a lot of that he did also for himself to make sure that he focused on staying alive. It wasn't a bit. That's the most amazing thing. You saw Brody, yes, positive push, energy. I'm a warm-up 818 till I die. That wasn't a bit. That's who he was. I mean, like I said, you saw him at Gelson's, you saw him at Starbucks, or you saw him in a fucking club, or you saw him in a bullpen with his friends or on a parade float. That's who fucking Brody Stevens was. And there's so much phony in what we do. And there's so much of a front you have to put up so you don't offend somebody who might be famous someday and could be in a position to give you a job. There's a lot of that, man. And, it's just like anybody's job where you got to be nice to the boss. You got to be nice to anyone because eventually they could be the boss. All that stuff is creeping around, and in comedy it's even worse because, I mean, you can get fucking whacked out of something really quick. Brody had a period a couple of years ago where he was having a real problem with these festival organizers because he toured with Chappelle. The guy did stadiums with fucking Chappelle and Burr and those guys. And then he wasn't getting paid, and he was the squeaky wheel. He went on Twitter and he talked about it, how they didn't pay him and they didn't give him any money. And I can remember thinking at the time, Jesus, Brody, this is fucking, you got to watch it, man. What are you doing here? But then in my brain, I'm like, well, fuck, he's more successful than you are, so maybe he knows what the fuck he's doing, man. And I couldn't reach out. I didn't know him that well to go, hey, man, you should throttle it down. I'm sure he had friends to do that because he's friends with Zach and Sarah and everybody else. I mean, Zach was his best friend in comedy. But when I saw that post from Graham, I said, can you think of anyone who is more universally beloved in what we do? Because again, even any name you could think of, someone's jealous or catty or thinks they're a hack or they did these, everybody, it's an industry born on the sharp knives wielded by the people who participate in it. And nobody had the knives out for Brody. He was beloved at the store, just like he was beloved at the Improv, just like he was beloved at the UCB. He was a fucking tornado. He did one of the best sets I've ever seen in my life. One of the 5 best sets, got to be in the history I've ever seen. It reminded me. I used to tour with Jimmy all the time. And on the nights when Jimmy had it, Jimmy fucking had it. And I should say, he was always great. Jimmy's always been great. Jimmy never mailed anything in, Pardo. But he had some nights where you're like, this is a fucking home run. I mean, this is ridiculous how good it is. And I got to see Brody do a set like that one time. He was a warm-up who did a bunch of warm-ups for TV shows. Tying him in with Pardo. I went to Jimmy Pardo's taping one time. Jimmy did a pilot. And, Christian Finnegan was on it, Pete Holmes. There were a lot of big names. Because that's how they put together a pilot. They try to get the best comedians, the best names, the biggest names they possibly can. And I was nursing some bruises over not being asked to participate. Because, I did a thing where, like, I always wanted to kind of be in any Jimmy project, and it caused problems, actually. He would get something going on, and in my mind, I'd be like, is there a spot for me here? Is there a spot for me here? And it's like, now that I look back at it, I go, man, that was fucking greedy and wrong, and I probably came off like a real stiff prick trying to get myself into a fucking shoehorned project that he had for himself, and then what am I going to get myself, a writing gig or this gig? Whatever. But that night I was there. I was in the audience to support. It wasn't about that. I was there to have a good time and support my friend. And Brody did the warm-up. Because again, when you're doing a pilot, you want it to be the best it possibly can. So they went and got Brody, who was the best warm-up guy in the fucking world. Because that's a hard, thankless gig. And his relentless positivity always made it look fucking easy. So he's doing warm-up, he's hanging out, all that. So finally the taping ends. And there's this weird thing after Like any comedy show, at least. And look, when I say it's weird, I'm speaking solely from my perspective. Other comedians may not feel this. But when you haven't been involved in a successful show and you're floating around the periphery of it, you want to kind of hang out with all the comics, but they're all getting their shine. You know, they're all getting the rub from having done a great show. When we did Jimmy's one-man show, it was me and Pat and Jimmy. And when it ended, we're all kind of hanging around, we're greeting everybody and talking. And there's a room full of other comedians. And I know when I was one of those other comedians, I would always be weird. Like I didn't want to approach the guys in the show because I didn't want to look like I was stepping on their thing. But you had to tell them they did a good job, but you had to turn away and you had to walk. You know, you didn't want to hog their time, even though you're great friends. At the same time, this is their moment. You don't want to fucking intrude on it. But there's also that thing where you're like, hey, I'm funny. I can hang. I know these guys, and at least that's what I have inside of me. So that show ended, the pilot taping, and there was the thing where everybody's milling about on stage, and it's, you know, Jimmy and his agent, they're talking, and I believe Pat was there with me, and Karen was with me too. There's my ex-wife Karen, and Brody, and Christian Finnegan, like I said, Pete Holmes, and I forget, there were a couple of other real names, and they're all on the stage talking, and I'm not on the stage, but I'm lurking. And, you know, I'd like to talk to my friend Jimmy and tell him good job, but he's getting glad-handed by everybody. But also I'd like to come up and schmooze a little bit like I'm a comedian, because there's that thing inside you where everything's a green room. You want to bust balls. You want to have fun. You want to trade. And also there's a look at me involved in what I did. I wanted to meet Christian Finnegan and Pete Holmes. I had met Pete Holmes once before, and it's not that it didn't go well. It didn't go. He and Chelsea Peretti had a conversation in a green room when I was standing there, and they acted like, literally I was invisible. The two of them they had inside jokes, and they were going back and forth. And, you know, Pete was sitting on the couch next to me. She was sitting on the couch across from him, and I was there, and I was not in the loop at all. I wanted to be like, hey, I'm on the same show. I'm funny. I mean, I can probably trade with you guys and have some fun. Let's go back and forth. But they had such a shorthand, and they were such good friends already. There was no way I could just burst into the conversation. And I would have liked to have been included, but I wasn't. So then seeing him there at the taping, I thought, oh boy, it's going to be the same kind of thing. And I don't know Finnegan at all, you know, and these are funny dudes. And I was lurking, and Brody saw me, and he just goes, Mike Schmidt. And I'm like, and I just pointed at him, and he comes over to me, and he goes, come on. And he goes, what are you doing over here? And he brings me up on the stage. And I didn't talk to Holmes. He had walked away, but I talked to Finnegan a little bit, and then, wound up getting to Jimmy, but I was included. The fourth wall had been broken because Brody had come over to grab me and bring me up on stage, essentially saying, hey, you belong up here too. Even though I wasn't in the show, he could see that I was kind of lurking, and he took that step rather than just, you know, saying my name he came and got me. He brought me up on the stage. And it was, look, he probably didn't think anything about it, but for me, I was like, that was a really fucking cool thing to do. Because I was, I will admit, I was jealous, and I didn't know what to do, and I was a little weird, and I didn't want to just insinuate myself, and that's, he didn't think twice about it. That's who he was. When I say I saw him get to do one of the most amazing sets I've ever seen, there was a show that Matt Belknap used to book at, it was called See You Next Tuesday. It was on, because Comedy Death Ray was the show. For a while, Comedy Death Ray was the comedy show in town, and it was the early Tuesday show at the UCB. And then after it, Belknap would do another stand-up show called See You Next Tuesday. See You Next Tuesday is the show where I performed with Robin Williams. He did a drop-in, and he asked Matt if he could go up, and Matt said yeah, and Jeselnik was the fucking MC, and Jeselnik did me a solid again by letting me take out Robin Williams, because I had to follow Robin Williams. So Jeselnik, in between Robin Williams and me, he was the MC, and he could have done 5 minutes on Robin Williams, but I had asked him backstage if he would mind if I did it, and he said cool, and he let me do it. And so I got to make fun of Robin Williams. I got to get that shine. I got to get that heat. And that was a great thing that Jeselnik did for me. And, you know, as I say these things out loud, I wonder more and more why I'm not back doing the thing that I love. You know, Brody did a good thing for me, and Jeselnik did a good thing for me. These are people who reached out and helped me. And these are small gestures, certainly, but they meant everything to me at the time. So I was at See You Next Tuesday, and I can't remember if I was performing or I just hung out after Death Ray. I might have done Death Ray and hung out for Matt's show. But regardless, Brody was closing See You Next Tuesday, and I wanted to watch. So, it was a great show. It's the UCB, of course, and everybody's doing great. And then they bring out Brody to close it, and Brody walks on stage. Well, first they start playing a song. There's a song I had no idea what it was, but it's just a guitar riff. This chimey guitar riff almost sounds like U2, and it's real bright. You know what I mean? It's not sinister. It's just a bright. And Brody walks on stage, and he just paces. He literally walks out on stage, and people clapping or whatever, and they sit down, and the whole song is playing. Ding 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 ding, and he walks around the stage. Clearly, he has told them to play this song. It wasn't because everybody else got theme music, but he's letting this music go. And he walks around, and finally he sits down. And there's a part in the song where the drums kick in, and Brody just starts to drum along with the song. And this was the thing Brody used to do. He'd bring drumsticks everywhere, and he would do this drumming thing. And I remember I used to think to myself, I'd be like, this is the goofiest fucking thing. Like, why is this even a thing? But then you watch him do it, and you're like, oh, that's why, because it's fucking awesome. And so when you watched him do it, because sometimes I thought it was stupid. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'd see Brody. There were some nights I didn't get it. I'd just be like, all right, you're just banging your head into a fucking wall here. But then the nights where it fucking worked, and more often than not, it fucking worked. The nights where it worked, but I would still not understand how a guy could just yell out his area code and get laughs. Or a guy could just fucking yell out stuff about being a model in Pakistan, or he would ask people's name. You got your arms crossed, enjoy it. You loosen up, all this. I mean, just silliness, but it would work. It would fucking work. And I remember being puzzled by it. And like I said, when I say jealous, I mean just like I'm like, how can he get laughs doing that? Like I would kill to just be able to walk out and get laughs being that person, just saying anything. And as I've grown as a performer over the years, I can see it was because there was sincerity in what he did. Again, like I said, it wasn't a bit. That's who he was. And so he would just fucking barrel through doing it, and eventually he was going to wear you down. He was going to crush that fucking room, and he did it. He just did it. So he sat down and he drummed. And again, it was that dumb thing where I was like, I don't know why this is working, but for me that night, it was working. And he let the whole song play. The whole fucking song. And then he got up and he did that, the whole bit again with the where you from, who are you, what's your name, where'd you go to high school? And he would say the name of somebody who went to your high school, like an athlete. And I know it sounds silly, and the sum of its parts all broken down sounds ridiculous, but when you put it together and coming out of his mouth and the way he carried himself, I mean, he fucking destroyed. I sat there transfixed. I couldn't believe it. I texted Jimmy when I left. It was like midnight, because he did over a half hour. He might have done 35 minutes or something. And I texted Jimmy. I just watched Brody fucking destroy this place, because it was crazy how good it was. It was astonishing, because again, people. All right, this will sound bad. Civilians fall for that kind of thing. Civilians can see a guy yelling his area code and just being a silly, goofy character, and they might not know how to interpret it, but they'll laugh, just whatever. Brody used to have a great line where he'd say something, and then if it didn't get a laugh, he'd repeat it, and he'd go, I should get a laugh on cadence alone. And he wasn't wrong, because the way he was delivering things, it's whenever he says the hard K sound, or if you do a sing-songy delivery, like there's tricks, but he would crush it. So when civilians would fall for it, in my brain I would just be like, well, of course they did, because this is a trick. But comedians, we're cynical. We're a cynical lot, and we see this. I know what you're trying to do there. Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, I see the angle. I see what you're doing here, what you're working. But Brody had a way of superseding that. Whether I questioned it or not, I also had to admit that coming out of him, it wasn't forced. It wasn't something he created. He was just being himself at an amplified level. There's a way, like in pro wrestling, they say the guys who cut the best promos are just being themselves amplified. That's why Stone Cold Steve Austin caught on. When they brought him in, they tried to make him like the fucking ringmaster in some places. And they gave him a personality, all these weird, dumb fucking things. But when he just got to be Texas asshole and got to talk a bunch of shit, that's when he fucking went through the roof. That's when fans identified with him, because they believed him. And people believed Brody. And you were right to believe in Stone Cold because he was living his gimmick just louder than he normally lived his life. But that's who he was. He was the Texas rattlesnake, just a fucking shit kicker from fucking Texas who could beat your ass and talk shit. That's who he was. And he just put it on fucking blast. Well, that's who Brody was. I heard a description of him. Someone said that he was like a jock doing performance art. And that's a really good way to describe it, because he was a jock through and through. I mean, he would, even on stage, he'd do batting stances and make you guess who he was doing. He'd run through a bullpen on stage. He'd show you, yeah, leg kick, important, shift the weight, lean forward, wait for the sign. I mean, and you're like, why is this working? I don't know why this is working, but it was fucking working. It was working because of him, because sheer force of will, because his personality was just that big, and it was genuine. I think that's more than anything. He was an original. He was genuine. Because look, a lot of guys work the crowd. A lot of guys, have a character that they do. He was just Brody. And he was that way off stage like he was on stage. I one time I was working on the lot for Starface, and he was there doing warm up on a show, and I mean, he saw me from across the lot. He was sitting on a banister. And I didn't even see him. I'm just walking. I just hear Schmidt, and I look at him and he goes, "Successful on the lot, 2 comedians." Just magic, just silliness. And he was, like I said, he was like it all the time. He was that guy. And so Friday, when I opened my phone and I saw his name, and in my brain, I hoped, like maybe he just got a really big deal. Like maybe or he won the lottery. Something good, please. But I knew. And when I clicked on his name, I just gasped. And then I told stories to people to watch. I found out live on Twitch that my friend had hanged himself, and then I eulogized him because I had to. I couldn't, I wasn't going to run and hide from it. But that's who he was as a guy. He was a monster. He was a genuine person. And I'm sorry that he was in so much pain all the time. You wish there's something you could do for somebody who's in pain, let alone in pain all the time. He would put up Instagram stories or Twitter from his mom's house, and Daisy the dog, and he would talk about his sister, and I remember, because again, I didn't know him well, but I knew him, and he was always kind to me, and he was Brody. It wasn't even that he was kind to me; he was just Brody. He was kind to everybody. But I can remember looking at his social media and seeing he was, he didn't have a girlfriend, or he didn't get married, or I don't know if he dated much. He certainly didn't. He kept it close to the vest. It was him and his mom and his sister and his demons. And I really wish his mom and sister had won. But you can hope for anything in the world, and it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's too strong. It's too fucking strong. Depression is a monster. I've toyed with the idea of thinking that I might have a low-level version of it, because I read people want to sleep all the time, or they don't leave their apartment, they don't do all these things, and I'm like, well, my life's gotten pretty small. That's kind of what I do. I don't go to clubs. I don't do those things. But then I'm angry at myself for even thinking that I might have something that would be comparable to the force that made my friend take his own life. But, I'm whatever. It's not about me. It's about him. And I will tell you right now, if you've not seen the Comedy Central show, find the episodes. Because not only is there a lot of funny, but there's a lot of poignance. As he... there's a great shot where he's finally back on his meds, and he's with his mom and his sister, and he's got a bow tie on. He looks beautiful. I mean, he just really looks regal and good. I mean, he just was that guy. Carried himself like an athlete. Always. And you see him talking about his, basically talking about his demons. There's shots of him in his room, and he's like, I don't know why I live here. And I've heard some things, after the fact about why this might have happened, and he had gone off his meds for reasons, and I've talked to some people, and I don't, it doesn't matter. It's like when Prince died, I told you my friend David Max was like, who cares? He's dead. Doesn't matter. And he's right. I don't give a fuck if it's fentanyl or a noose or you fell down a flight of fucking stairs. Doesn't matter. You're gone. And it's terrible. It's just fucking awful. And certainly there were people who he meant more to, and there were people who were close to him, and there were people who loved him and saw him every night. I mean, the guy closed at the fucking Comedy Store every weekend. Friday, Saturday, he'd be the closing act in the main room. Name on the fucking marquee. And people would wait to see him, and they'd meet him, and they'd talk to him, and he'd become friends with them. And he was the guy who lit up and touched all of the lives around him. But the light inside him was dead. And it finally got put out on Friday. And it's terrible, and it's awful, and it's a tragedy because, I talked a lot about it on the show, that you should spread joy. You should just be happy and be kind to people. I said on the show, I said this, I've said it on here, and I said it on the Twitch thing. I said, this world is a fucking wood chipper. If you've got a chance to give somebody a hand up when they're down, you do it. And that's the kind of guy Brody Stevens was. He couldn't take anybody else's hand to let himself get pulled up. And that's a trick of the mind. That's a disease. Depression will fuck with you in ways that you can't even fucking think about. I've read more and more about it over the past 5 years, 6 years, just to try to learn. Like I said, even if I have a fucking pictogram of it, I just want to understand it. But one thing I will never understand is what happened with Brody. I don't understand how you could be so. What trick of the mind can lead you think that you want to go away, that you don't want to be here anymore? But also, I don't face that kind of tremendous sadness. I don't see that kind of bleak future. I don't think terrible things. There's always a reason for me to get up in the morning. There's always a reason for me to move forward and do stuff, whether it's a book I haven't read, or it's a song I want to hear, or a show I want to do for you guys, or an email I want to answer. Well, hold on. Let's take that one off the list right now. There's never an email I want to answer, but my point is I always have a goal, whether I'm going to the gym with John, or I'm even if it's something as simple as I'm going to eat somewhere later that I like, which unfortunately rules my life a lot more than it should. But I don't understand the idea of leaving this world. I don't. I also don't think it's selfish, and I don't think any of those things. I think it's a terrible tragedy that someone feels that they have to kill themselves, but if they're in that much pain, I can't be the one to tell them that they can't do the things they need to do to fix that. It's selfish for me to think that my friend is gone and to wish he was still here, when in reality, when he was here, he didn't like it here. He tried. He did everything he could, but his mind got the better of him and took him out. And that's a fucking shame. And it's a loss for comedy, and it's a loss for the world, because he was kind to people at Starbucks and Gelson's as well. He was kind to people in neighborhoods, and he was just a nice, powerful, positive presence. And I'm going to miss him. And I think the whole world is, on some level. Certainly every comedian I've known is going to miss him, because Jesus fucking Christ, I have never seen the kind of outpouring. I mean, we're talking, it's a week now. It's just about a week. And there are people who still, social media, they can't, they're now, it's, it struck them down where they're not going out, and they're sad and they're crying, and it's just a chain reaction, because if you can see it happen to him, maybe you've got that in living inside you, you think to yourself, well, what if that can happen to me? I don't understand any of that, but I know that his being gone is a tremendous loss for comedy, and it's a tremendous loss for his friends and anyone who ever met him, honestly, because he was a good person. And though he wasn't my best friend, but fuck that. It doesn't need a qualifier. Yeah, we weren't best friends. I didn't see him all the time, but when I saw him, I might as well have been his best friend. And that's one of the reasons why it's so terrible to lose him, because he made you feel special in the moment. He made you feel like he was happy to see you. He made you feel like you mattered. And it wasn't a bit. And I wonder if he did that and overcompensated, making people feel happy and comfortable because he could never find that feeling in his own skin. I don't know, man. I'm not fucking armchair dime store fucking psychologist. All I am is a grieving friend. And I hope he has found peace. And that happened Friday. And I finished the stream. When I talked to people and I got through it, and I ended the stream kind of early because it was fucking weird, man. I won't lie. And everybody was very kind. Again, like I said, they go, "Hey, man, you can go." And I go, "No, you got to fly back into the face of normalcy and make it work." And then I don't check the phone, because I mean, what's it gonna say? Came back from the grave? I mean, what the fuck? There's no news. He's gone. Brody's gone. So I played games, which seems trivial and weird, but that's what my life is to a certain extent these days. So I just dove right back in. And I played God of War, more of that. And I only played for like 4 hours, 3.5, I think. And then finally, I wasn't having fun. My brain was somewhere else. And people were very, I didn't use that as an excuse. I said, okay, we're done. Because, I mean, look, it was still 3.5 hours. I mean, I'm still there doing 3.5 hours worth of bullshit. And people were, again, very kind. They hung out. We participated, and it was great. And then, people said they were sorry about my friend, and I understood that. And that was very cool. So I left, and I went on social media, because I had to kind of find out what was going on. And I went on Facebook. And I saw a post on Friday from a friend of mine who I spoke about on last week's show. And you know her. I've talked about her on here many times. My friend Maki. And I told you I'd do Maki Mondays. And I think I actually referenced her last week because I talked about her big fucking couch that I could not stop falling asleep in. Like I would go to her house on Maki Monday. And we'd put in a movie or whatever, or we'd just be talking. And then she'd have to take a phone call, and I would fall asleep instantly. I just, because her couch was so comfortable, and I was always so fucking tired with my sleep schedule. But then one of her cats would come over, because all of her cats had claws, and it would claw my leg, and I'd wake up. I went online, and I saw my friend Maki from Maki Mondays, and she posted, I'm going into hospice. Please include me in your thoughts and prayers, and then some other note. And I was already reeling. And I saw this on Friday, and so I wrote her immediately. I texted her and just said, Jesus, Maki, I just saw your post. What can I do? Because let me tell you this, my friend Maki, she's been dealing with this for a long time. Okay. I'll tell you my history with Maki. She's my friend and has been my friend and been a listener. Started as a listener. And then started to write me. She wrote me in like 2009, 2010, and we exchanged notes on social media back and forth. And she was always very kind. She liked the show. And whenever I would say something, she would pop in and she would give me advice on something, or if I had a poll, like when I talked about John Cougar tickets with my wife, and she would always write me and go, you should do this, or here's my vote, and you're so funny, and she was always very complimentary and nice to me, and I would write her back. And honestly, I went back and looked at the history of our correspondence this weekend, and it's a little embarrassing because, I try to reach out and write everybody, but also sometimes it can sound like a form letter, and I don't mean it to do that. But sometimes when you have to answer 20 emails in a day, you can wind up saying the same thing, and But that was early in our correspondence. I saw that. And, here was a funny thing. She wrote me in, I think it was February of 2013. And, she wrote about the show and how it made her laugh and some things. and I didn't get to answer that note. And then 2 weeks later, was a show called Almost, which is when my wife wound up leaving me, and I did that show. And she wrote me a note that week and said, "Hey, look, I'm devastated. I'm crying here with you. I hope you're okay." And very nice. Reached out. And then I wrote her back, and we started to have a kind of a steady correspondence back and forth. And then we lost track because, again, she's got family, she's got friends and all that stuff, and I did too. And then I started dating somebody else. And then when I was dating my ex, she wound up having a cancer scare on her face, where she was going to have to go in and get a biopsy done on a she had already had it once, and she was going to go in and get a biopsy done to see if they had something else they had to take care of. Well, I talked about it on the show, and then Maki wrote me. I hadn't heard from her in a while, and she said, "Hey, listen, I understand exactly what Jill is going through. I'm currently dealing with stage 4 cancer. And I've been going in for hardcore chemo, and I'm trying to do the best I can to balance my life and make it work. But I understand if she ever wants to talk to somebody about it, if she ever has a question or she wants to go ahead and I can give her an advice and what to do." And I mean, just hearing that she had been afflicted in such a way. I mean, stage 4. That's not. Look, man, we're not bucking around at that point. And this is in 2016. So I wrote her right away, and I said, "Jesus, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. This circumstance is terrible." And I wrote her a long note, and she wrote me another long note back. And then I said, "Listen, if you ever need anything, I would, I'm here. Whatever you want me to do." Because it was around that time when also I was starting to foment this idea of you should be nice to people. You should reach out to people. You should do, if you can take care of someone or be nice to them, you should do that. Because, I had started to see Shannon. I was learning more about myself, and also, my personal life might have been crumbling around me, but I was trying to become a different, better person. So, Maki wrote me, and she said, "Well, thank you for the thing. The only thing I could really think of," because she referenced this in her note when she said she had cancer, that she listened to me through her chemo. She would save my shows for her chemo sessions, and she would listen during chemo so she could laugh through it. And it was that really that made me reach out, because that's just a goddamn honor to know that when someone was at their lowest, they made sure you were there with them so they didn't get too low. That you were used to carry them through the most difficult moments in their life, that when they thought of going through those without you, it seemed unbearable, so they had to wait and save your show, save your voice for the most difficult moments in their lives, so they could get through it, so they could make sense of it. And I thought that was powerful. So that's when I offered. I said, "If you need anything, you want anything, I'm here. You let me know." And then she said, "The only thing I could think of would be if you were to come and sit with me during chemo. But I know you could never do that because you're an hour away from me, and it would just seem ridiculous. So, just keep doing the show and being funny." And then I wrote her back and I said, "It's not ridiculous, and you tell me when. I will be there." And the funny thing is, I talked about it on this show, and I compared her to Chloe, the woman in Fight Club who was dying of cancer and just wanted to get fucked one last time. And I said that was what Maki was. Because I'm a great fucking guy, right? Because I'm certainly the best person in the world. When I talk about someone and I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's amazing that she would use me for this," and I go, but then part of me thinks that she's like Chloe in Fight Club, and what's gonna happen? At the time I was with Lily, and Lily's just like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, man?" But there's never a thought that crosses through my skull that doesn't come flying out of my fucking pie hole right into this goddamn microphone for you guys to consume. And it made me laugh, so I said it, and then she said that she thought it was really funny. She's like, your words of tribute made me cry, but then you made me laugh with that comparison, and that was very nice. And she said, if you wanted to come and join me for chemo, and I said, "You name it, you fucking name it, man, I'm there." And that's how Monday with Maki Mondays was born. So once a month, when she was going through chemo, I only went to a couple like of the chemo sessions because they were spaced out in weird ways. And she even said, I don't want you to come to this one. Like she would, because I told her, I said, when you need me, you let me know. I'm there. There's not even like nothing will keep me from you. I will come and I will hang out. So the first time I went up, it wasn't even for chemo. I just went and hung out with her at her house. And I met her nephew and her brother. And I met her boyfriend, Armando, who's just a good man. And you have to come home and see this. Who's this weird fucking dude in my house? You know what I mean? It's just it to me. If I was a kid, and I came home and Steve Dahl was in my house hanging out with Lenny. Yeah, it's that some guy from the radio who we fucking listen to all the time. It's just it's a different era. It's a weird thing, but Armando was just a gentle and kind man who completely understood. And I met him and I got along with him really great. And like I said, I met her brother and her nephew, and he was just this precocious kid, and he was climbing all over the place. She had like 5 cats, and he'd come bounding into the house after school because I'd get there around like noon or 1 in the afternoon, and we'd go have lunch. We'd go to a pizza place that she liked, or there was a deli. I said, you tell me where. It's your town, so wherever you want to go, we go. So there was an Italian deli, and we'd sit in the sun because she wanted to be outside. And I mean, it was fucking hot because she lived north of me about an hour or so or whatever, and Jesus Christ, I mean, it's basically on the fucking sun, but I didn't care. I needed it too. I don't get out enough. So Maki Mondays, I would show up, and we'd either watch a movie or we'd just talk. We'd just go in the backyard and fucking talk because that's what I do. And she'd talk to me, and I learned about her history, and we'd talk about our personal lives. And she'd been with Armando for 8 years, and she loved him so much, and then she hated that she was sick, and she felt that she was a burden to him and to others, and she was a burden to herself, and she wanted to get back to work, and that was always a struggle. And it's so funny because I would think to myself, you know what, I never want to go back to work. I never want to get to work. That's never on my agenda. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I hope I can get back to work. And that was her number one goal because she loved her job. She worked I don't want to get too much into this, but she worked in a field where she was very an incredibly intelligent woman and had a really good job, and her insurance was a killer. Her she got the cancer in 2015, and we talked in 2016 when she was going through it. She had already amassed $1 million in medical bills. $1 million just to stay alive. And that is a fucking tragedy. But luckily she had a ton of insurance and her job paid for it and took care of it. But she was still, it had a 5-figure hospital bill. Still trying to pay her co-pays and things like that. We would talk about that, so I went up there on that first Monday and I hung out. Like I said, we went to the deli. We just sat in the sun. We went to her house. We sat in the yard. Then we went in and sat on that gigantic fucking couch. And it was just a friendship. And it became a routine thing. Mondays, I'd just text her. I go, what Monday works this month? And I would go to her place and we'd go eat lunch, and then we'd hang out for like 4 or 5 hours. I'd be 5-6 hours, whatever. I'd get there at like 1. I'd leave around 7 or 8. Sometimes Armando would get home and he'd bring dinner home, and we'd have dinner as well. And it was just a friendship. She was just a lovely woman who was going through a terrible circumstance, and I just wanted to be part of it. I would go up for chemo, and I only went up like a couple times for that. And she even said, it's so sporadic, and also they put her on really powerful chemo because this thing would come back with a vengeance. Like she would fight it off and would be in remission. She'd be fine. Not fine, but she'd be fighting it off and she'd be good. And then she'd start to get her hope up that she was going to get back to work and she was going to start doing those things and getting her life back. That's all she wanted. She's 50 years old. She's my age. All she wanted was her life back. Literally, like I said, the normalcy of going to work. I would imagine the normalcy of just waking up in the morning and being able to take a fucking shower and not have your skin feel like it was being pierced by goddamn spikes and needles, and your whole neural system alive with fire because they're putting poison in your veins to keep you alive. They're killing you to keep you alive. But it's a necessary evil. And she lived for her cats and she lived for her nephew. who she couldn't wait. She would read to him. He'd bound in and she'd give him an iPad and they'd draw and they'd play games and I'd look at the games and we'd all jump in for this, mazes. She was doing everything she could to experience every moment of her life. And we talked and it was frustrating for her because she just couldn't completely be well. So I would go for Maki Mondays and she'd make me watch Guardians. She made me watch Guardians of the Galaxy, which I hadn't seen and I had no interest in seeing it, but she showed me and now I was like, Jesus Christ, that was really good. You win, And we would talk about, her past relationships. We'd talk about her relationship with Armando and how she was so happy that he had come along. And, we'd talk about my relationships. We'd go back and forth and we started to fill each other in on every aspect of our lives. Because it was just the normal she needed. She didn't need to be pitied. She didn't need to be told. I think that's one of the reasons she chased me away from the chemo. Is I went a couple times, and it wiped her out. I'd take her home, and she'd be wiped out, and she would genuinely apologize, and I would say, you don't have to apologize. She'd, no, I'm sorry. I'm so weak. I can't do anything. I can't stand up, and I know this is boring for you. And I'd go, look, it was just like the same thing when she said, hey, man, I know it's just a dumb idea that you'd come an hour. No, fuck that. I'm there. I'm here. And she'd apologize for the chemo, and I'd say, you don't have to. I know what you're going through. That's why I'm here. I came to do this. I want to help. I want to be a part of this. And was there probably some guilt on my end, trying to make up for the fact that I wasn't there for my wife's chemo all the time? Yeah. I won't lie. Did I look at it as a way to right some past wrongs? Certainly. But overall, I just wanted to help a new friend. So I would go spend time with her. She chased me away from the chemo. Again, she thought that was a good idea. But then after two of them, she was like, nah, this is because she spent most of the time apologizing, feeling weird. So I would just go up for Maki Mondays. We'd get some lunch, we'd hang out, we'd talk. And that was the best part. Is she could talk just like I can. She would talk forever. She had stories and, stories of costume parties or, all these, anything that was normal to her. She was so happy to be normal, so happy. It wasn't like a reflection on a past life. It was just her standing at the starting line waiting for it to get going again. She never looked at it like, my life is over and this is me taking trips down memory lane. She was like, this is what I love to do and I can't wait to get back to doing it. And I would listen and then I would talk and then I would listen and then I would talk and I never would have any pity. I would never say, oh, what do you need? Or I didn't dote because she took pride in being able to get up and open the patio door. She took pride in being able to walk to the deli in the 100-degree weather. Because I'd say, hey, I can drive. No, that's fine. And she didn't realize, I wanted to drive for me. I don't want to fucking walk in 100-degree weather. But I did. Because I knew that she wanted to. And it was her way to feel the sun on her skin. And it was a way to feel life, to be alive. Even if you're sitting there sweating, you're still alive. It's proving to you that you did something. I'm sure there was accomplishment for her in walking to the deli. In walking, round trip 1.5 miles or whatever, 3/4 mile one way, and she wanted to do that because it meant that she was alive. And I indulged it because I did not want to do it. I wanted to fucking drive because I'm fat and lazy. But I would go spend Maki Mondays. And like I said, this started in 2016. And I would hear, I'd see her social media. It's not like we talked all the time. I'd stay in contact with her and say, hey, what are we doing this month or how are we working it? But, I didn't insinuate myself into her life all the time. Because again, she had Armando, she had her family, her parents. I met them. They were beautiful people. And, she had a whole life before me. And it was still, look, I loved going. We became great friends. But at the same time, it was still a little strange, I'm sure, for the people around her. And certainly, because even she said at one time she looked at me and she's just like, this is so weird that you're here. And I'm like, why? And she's just like, because I've spent 8 years listening to you in my ears every week. And now you're here. And I said, yeah, I know. That happens sometimes with people. It gets a little strange. But I'm lucky that anybody would ever want to spend time with me. I'm happy that anybody would see that I have any sort of value to their lives. So, Maki Mondays it was. And then, 2016 turned into 2017, and I'd see her, and then she went into, maybe not remission, but it wasn't there, but they were trying different chemo, then oral chemo, or they would, and I don't want to reveal too much, but she started to go through different procedures because things were changing. She was finding masses, and then they were coming out, but then they were going away, but then there was a shadow, and it's just that I can't imagine how it feels to live with that uncertainty all the time, especially at that young an age. And then when my mom got cancer, she got lung cancer because my mom got sick in 2013, 2014, I think. And that's right wheelhouse when Maki was going through it, and she would write me and check in. And, my mom's beaten lung cancer twice and brain cancer once, but I talk to her now, and it permeates her life. I talk to my mom now, who's going to be 76 in June, and the first thing is, what's the weather like there? Oh, the weather's this. Oh, the weather here's this. Oh, yeah, well, I go for my tests in March. It consumes you. And if you're 76, it's hard. You're just trying to enjoy the rest of your time here on the planet. But if you're 44 or 48, you have to be thinking you're getting robbed of your vitality now and whatever life you might have left to live. That's the thing. If there was a guarantee that you were going to get through it, but you had to give up 3 years of chemo and hard work and no work, whatever the fuck, then maybe you make that deal if they say, but you'll live to be 80. But the crushing uncertainty has to weigh on you almost as much as the physical. Like I said, she had oral chemo, so her veins were just getting fucked, and she was getting poison put inside her, and she fought through it. I spent time with Maki, and we didn't talk about it, at length. We talked about it every time I saw her, but she, sometimes she'd start to talk about it and she'd choke up, and then sometimes she could just deal with it matter of factly. It would hit her differently at different times, and I could listen. And I could go, yeah, this is awful, and I'm sorry. And then Armando would come home and hug her, and everything would be okay, and until the next day, or the next treatment, or the next time they found a mass. She would have these weird procedures where they were like draining fluid from her heart. You know what I mean? Like what the fuck is that? Are you kidding me? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. Or her lungs would be, they'd have to do it with one lung, and the cancer would turn up on different sides of her body, or there would be a mass, but then it turned out the mass wasn't this, and she didn't need to worry about it, and it would be it was this, again, the devastation you must feel every time you think you're just about to get back to work and your insurance is squared away, and then you feel a pain in your calf, and then they trace that to something that's on your hip. And you just go, what the fuck is happening to me, man? To be betrayed by your body. When you see people get Alzheimer's, or you see people who become paralyzed, or when their legs give out, or you become a prisoner of your own body and therefore your own mind, because all you're left to do is sit there and wonder and worry and why me the fuck out of every situation you're in. But Maki never did that with me. She would always approach it matter of factly, just like my mom. I got my tests, I can do this. And Maki was always optimistic. Always, well, this new treatment should be okay, and we'll see, but I don't know what to do. But I'm going to do it because, they say it should help, but I'm not sure. We'll have to see. But, of course, I'm going to do it, and I'm worried about this, but, it's this new oral. That was the thing. I can't get that out of my brain, the oral chemo, because that would just waylay her. That was supposed to be easier, and if it was anything but. So, through 2018, Maki Mondays started to kind of fall by the wayside a little bit. And I'd write her, I'd text her, and I didn't push, I would say, hey, I'm here, whenever, you tell me when. And she would always, this is the one thing she kind of never got over, but she would always go, well, look, I don't want to bother you with, coming all the way. And I'd be like, to the point where, I wanted to shake her. Just go, look, we're friends. I want to be there. I'm not, what the fuck am I doing? I'm doing nothing. So please. And I'd tease her about that, when she'd go, well, obviously you don't want her, or all that nonsense. But I started to see it for what it was in late 2018. Because then she would start to schedule days with me, and then she would cancel. She would cancel the week beforehand. She would cancel 2 days beforehand. She would say, let's do it tentatively, and then even the very next day she'd call to cancel. She said, we're having friends over, or the house is being remodeled, there was always a thing. And you know me, I'm a fucking banana head. So in my head, I'm like, is this run its course? Like, does she not want to be hanging out anymore? Maybe that's the case. And that would make sense. She's known, she had a life long before I walked into it. And she might be seeing other friends, and she might be doing whatever. And then it dawned on me, through seeing a lot of her other social media posts, she couldn't have me over. Yes, the house was being remodeled, and yes, she was having other friends over, but she also couldn't stand up. She was losing this fight. And as much as I like to think that I could have gone there and buoyed her with, hey, this is come on, man, let's up and at 'em, all that bullshit, or even just to give her some normalcy of a conversation about fucking or whatever. I had to realize that maybe she wasn't up to having me come up there. That maybe even walking to the deli, or driving to the deli, or eating lunch at all would be a chore. And she didn't want to tell me that because, again, out of her misplaced idea that she had to comfort me in some way by saying, oh, you don't have to drive all this way, or although, you're never inconveniencing me at all. But I think rather than say to me, look, I'm not doing good, she instead would schedule and then postpone and schedule and then cancel. And, I'd still send a text, and I'd say, all right, well, look, you let me know when. And I can tell you that she would pop into my head at random times, like in the shower. And I'd go, you know what, Jesus, I haven't heard from Maki. I haven't seen Maki. You got to remember to call her. You got to remember not call her. I got to remember to text her. I didn't call her because I didn't know if she wanted to talk or she could talk even. If she was that medicine fucks you up. I know people out there, you've been through cancer with your uncles, your aunts, your moms, your dads, your brothers, whomever. And you had to see it take them. Whether it took them fast or slow, it fucking took them. And you just sat there helplessly and you didn't know what the fuck to do. And you wanted to do everything. You thought there was anything you could do, you would do it, but there was nothing to be done. So Maki, she would cancel dates, and I would think of her, I'd pop in my brain and I'd go, well, you can't do more than you're doing. You've reached out to her. There's no reason to bother her about it. You and every text I've sent, I've say, hey, look, I'm here. When you need me or want me, you say the word and I'm there. So she knew. And she was never one to kind of blow that off. She got that part of it. But I think in her own brain, she was not ready. She couldn't see me. She just was wiped out. So we haven't done a Maki Monday in a while. I haven't seen her in like 4 months, I think it was. 4 or 5 months. And about a month ago, 5 weeks. No, it was the end of January. It was the end of January. It was a month ago. She texted me. And she was happy that I was on Twitch, and she heard I was playing Red Dead. And I should say this, Maki was a gamer. She was a tech geek. She was a geeky, that's what she loved. She loved that sort of thing. She loved comedy. Oh my God, she loved comedy. She got to see Bert Kreischer in December. She was so happy. I think it was December. Might have been November. But still, I just, She loved comedy. She loved to laugh. And she loved gaming. So she would play Red Dead all night because, again, she's homesick. And then sometimes she can't sleep and the medicine would affect her in weird ways. So she had a friend in Ohio and they would play online together. They'd play Red Dead. And she would tell me all these stories that she'd be playing and she loved it and she was good at it. And then when the guys would find out she was a girl, like gamers wouldn't want to play with her, like they wouldn't want her in the posse or whatever. And she was just like, what is, we would talk about the dynamics of the online experience. And she's one of the reasons why I have been trepidatious to go online and play games while I'm on Twitch, because she told me about the environment. You know, once people found out she was a woman, they would either try to kill her or they would leave her. Like they wouldn't be in her posse anymore or whatever the fuck. It was just crazy. So she would play all night with her friend in Ohio. And she told me about this game, Red Dead. And I had no idea what it was, but she was like, oh my God, it's so amazing. It's, you know, you're a cowboy. It's an open world game. She played Red Dead 1, I guess it is. And she just couldn't wait for the second one to come out. And so then, you know, like I said, we lost contact near the end of 2018. We didn't really talk much. I'd send her a text a month. She'd answer me back, and she'd schedule something. She'd cancel it. But then I wound up doing the Twitch thing, and I got a PS4, and I got Red Dead because I saw clips online. So I started to play it. Well, when she heard that I was playing it, because again, I started to go, you know, live in December on Twitch, and that's when she contacted me. It was it must have been the middle of January. And she texted me, and I texted her back. We talked, so I wanted to see if I can come see her in January. And she's like, oh my God, you're playing Red Dead? And she said, can you call me? And I said, sure. And this was, like I said, middle of January, maybe near the end. And I called her, and we talked for 3 hours. And she told me that, you know, she was sick and wasn't feeling great. And she said, you know what, we were remodeling the house and there were friends over and stuff, but at the same time, I just wasn't up to doing anything. So I was right in what I had thought. And I said, well, you know, that doesn't bother me. I mean, if you just want to sleep while I'm there. And she goes, yeah, but that's not any fun for you and that's not good. And I go, nah, dude, it's not about that. And she said, well, but also at the same time, I don't want to just sleep while you're here because, I mean, if you're coming up here, I want to hang out. But if I can't, I can't. And I said, you know what? Yeah. And so then I just went, you know what? You're right. I mean, I can't make it happen. I can't insinuate myself into her life and say, well, stop doing these things and do this so I can make you feel better. I just want to make you feel better. Let me come by and make you feel better. You know, it's just, you don't do that. But we talked and we talked and we talked and we talked about Red Dead, and she said, how is it? I said, it's amazing. And she hadn't been playing Red Dead 2 because she'd, you know, been sick. And I said, well, hell, you want me to ship it to you? You can play it or something? I go, I have the PS4 version, and I don't think she had a PS4. And she's like, no, but she goes, would you play online with me? And I went, oh. I go, you said everybody kills you online. And she's like, well, yeah, but it'll be me and you playing, and we'll get her friend from Ohio together. And she goes, we can be like our own little posse. I said, dude, I would do that immediately. I said, you got to tell me how to do it. I have no fucking clue. I go, I've just been doing the story mode online. On Twitch. And she's like, that's fine. It's easy. You do this instead. But there's a way. And she started to explain it. And I was like, great. I said, you tell me when you're up to it, you tell me and we'll figure out a date and a time. I said, I've been streaming but from 3:00 until late a lot of the time. I said, but I can amend it. I said also, and this was, right around the time that Mondays became for podcasts. And I said, you know, I'm making this shift. So maybe Monday nights would work. And she said, great. Oh my God. She goes, I'm so excited to play the second one. I haven't played it yet. And I go, it's amazing. It's an amazing achievement. I said, I haven't played video games in 20 years. Easy. I said, and so for me to go on and see what they've done. And I said, this is the most incredible thing I've ever played. It's the game. And she's like, oh my God, I told you. I said, yeah, but I'm hearing that this is so much better than Red Dead 1. Like just the graphics and the gameplay. I said, I'm excited for you to play it. And I would love to play online with you just to see you go, wow, I want to do it. She said, oh, great. And we talked about that. And she talked about her work and her insurance problems and trying to talk to them and get it squared away. And, you know, it's that thing where your work is covering you for for however long. She's been sick a very long time. And she's just as frustrated as her work was. And she would talk about this. And, you know, she wanted her job back. And then she wanted to get her insurance. I'm there. You listen is what you do. Because again, unfortunately, people have to deal with the minutia of that bullshit when they should be wondering how they're going to stay alive. When they should be channeling all of their energy. And again, as I've mentioned, that's just so exhausting. When your every waking moment is consumed with doing something to keep you alive, I can't imagine. And I know I'll face it. We'll all face it. You know, it's that thing where once you get older, eventually, that sort of thing that shadow looms for all of us. So we talked on the phone, and it was great. And I said, "You tell me when. I'll go online with you whenever you want." And then I didn't hear from her. And I've been, busy, consumed, podcasting and life, streaming. And then I picked up my phone and I saw on Facebook that she was in hospice. And I don't know a lot about being sick. I don't know how you get from here to there. Okay. How are you all of a sudden in hospice? Like it makes no sense. I had just talked to her. I had talked to her 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and now she's in hospice? Because she had mentioned when we talked that, again, like I said, they're trying this new medication, and one of the reasons they switched her to the oral chemo was because her veins were just fucking done. She had a portacath in her chest, which, Karen had that too. And that's a miracle, because they can just, stick something in your chest and do what they got to do. But when they still got to take blood out of your veins, and your veins are so fucking weak from getting destroyed by poison, that's no fun. So they got to play the vein game on your arm or on your hand and try to search for it, and they're just drawing fucking dust. So she was going through that. And it came back with a vengeance. I found this out when I talked to her boyfriend, that, I saw that she was in hospice, and so I wrote her a note. I just went, "Listen, Jesus Christ, I don't know how this happened, but you need to tell me what I can do." I said, if you want to Red Dead with me, you want to play online with me, you want me to come down there and play with you, you want me to come read to you, you want me to laugh with you, you want me to breathe with you, you want me to sit with you, you tell me and I'm there, whatever you need. And I got a text back, and it wasn't Maki. It was her boyfriend, Armando. And he said, "Hey Mike, I got your note. And, if you want to come see Maki, that would probably be a good idea. She's in hospice when she's here at her parents' house. So why don't you come and whenever." And I was like, "Okay." And I said, when do you want me to do this? You tell me. Because I tried to put it in his court. I go, "Listen to me. I know you have so many people you're juggling, so many different things, and I don't want it to be, fucking Grand Central Station at the house. So when do you need me there? When can I be there?" And he just said, "You need to come soon." And I said, "I can come today." This was Friday after I got off my stream. And I said, "I can come now." And he said, "No, that's fine." He goes, "What about tomorrow?" I said, "Great. Tell me when." "Tell me when." And he said, he wanted me to come in the afternoon at noon. I said, "Great, I can do this." So I did some research on what hospice means, and I found out that hospice means that you're home, and they're trying to keep you comfortable because the inevitable has arrived. So Saturday morning I woke up, and he texted me and he said, "Hey, I know we said noon, but can we make it 1?" Because again, he's juggling. He then gave me his phone number so I could text his phone, because he was answering me on her phone, and then he answered me from her Facebook account. I mean, all these different things. And finally he just gave me his number. He's like, and I said, "All right, I will text you on your number going forward." And I said, "Sure, man, 1 o'clock works." And it actually worked out for me, because then I could go You know, on Maki Mondays, I asked her a couple times, you know, because I'd go down there and we'd eat lunch, we'd do whatever. And then I said to her, I go, hey, is there anything you want from up here? Like, I've never even asked. Do you want me to bring anything to you? And she said, oh my God, you ever heard of a bakery called Porto's? And I said, fuck yeah. I mean, there's you know, my ex-wife discovered it in Pasadena, and then they built one on my street. And I said, you know, it's yeah, I know exactly what it is. She goes, well, you know, we really like Porto's if you want to do. So I would just go there when I would go for Maki Mondays. I'd say, what do you want? And she'd go, well, I don't, you know, pick an assortment. I go, well, you got to tell me, is there anything specific that you like? Because I'll happy, and whatever Armando likes, whatever Nathan likes, or her, you know, which is her nephew, your brother. I go, whoever wants something, you tell me. And she said, well, they have these pastries that have guava in them. So I literally went to this Porto's, and again, they have these things called cheese rolls, which are just like kind of cheese danishes, but part croissant. I mean, they're so fucking delicious. It's this Cuban bakery, and they are fucking hammered. They print fucking money. So whenever I would go to Maki's, I'd go there and I'd have to wait in line for, you know, 15, 20, 25 minutes. And then I just loaded up. I go, you know, give me like 12 cheese rolls. And then they had 3 different guava. They had guava and cheese. They had regular guava. Then they had guava rolls, which were just like these round pastries with guava inside. So I said, give me 4 of those, 4 of those, 4 of those. I mean, I didn't fucking know, man. I just, whatever she liked, whatever she wanted, I'd be happy to bring it. So on Saturday, I went to Porto's, because in my mind I thought, well, look, you know, again, hospice is about being comfortable, and I know she loved this, so I'm happy to go. I know Armando likes the guava stuff, so that's cool too. But at the same time, I recognized that they were going to have a lot of people coming through their house. I've learned in the past from wakes and funerals, never having dealt with hospice, but if you have a situation where people want to say goodbye, then it's going to be very busy. And I felt, well, you've got to have just pastries or whatever, just have stuff for people. So I went to Porto's on Saturday, and it was a weekend, and the line was out the door, man. And again, I was in line for 35 minutes this time. Same thing, give me 12 of these, 6 of these, 4 of those naked lady teas, free bowl of soup with that fucking hat, loaded up on the guava, grabbed myself a pair of Danish for the ride down, and hopped in the car and went to her parents' house. And they, you know, they've met me, and again, I'm sure they cast a weird, you know, I'm 6'2", 340, big guy. They're probably wondering who I am, and you know, oh, that's my radio friend, that's my podcasting friend, you know, and because her parents were, like her mom, you know, she spoke with a Japanese accent, you know, so I and her father, I believe, was also the same. I mean, he didn't have much of an accent, and he, you know, they were lovely. They were very nice to me always, and they loved her so much. But also at the same time, they were shell shocked, man, because they're trying to deal with the fact that their daughter is so sick. It's just, nobody wishes this on anybody, and it's coming for all of us. You know, there's a looming shadow over all of us. So, they were having her at her place, or at their place, I should say. And so I went there. Wasn't far from her house. And I showed up at the Porto's. I walked in, you know, and they were very nice to me when I walked in. Everybody, and you know, the father, it's that thing I talked about with my dad's wake. Life goes on. And so people are trying to have some normalcy. And these are her parents, and her mom's in the living room, and she's arranging stuff and having, you know, visiting with a friend on the couch, and her dad is puttering around in his workshop in the garage. And in a bedroom in their home, their daughter is dying. And I will never understand that. I felt so deeply for them. And they, you know, they were dealing with it with smiles, and everything seemed to be fine. And it was that thing where in your brain you go, well, shouldn't you guys be, this place should have like fucking black crepe up, and shouldn't everybody be fucking sad? But in reality, what's that going to accomplish? they may have accepted the inevitability, and this is how they dealt with it. You can't tell anybody how to grieve. You can't say, "Oh, well, you should be doing this. You should be doing this differently. What if you were doing this?" Well, that doesn't compute for anybody. It doesn't make sense. Let people be who they are and what they want to be. But it still is odd. It's an odd thing. And I don't have a child to bury, so thankfully I'll never have to have that fucking unique pain. So I came in, and her mom, she hugged me, and I had the Portos was in two giant bags. They're like, "Oh my gosh!" And Armando came out, and he was a ball of fire. He's just like, "Hey, Mike! Oh my God!" And he was manic. He was very amped up, and so he comes in, and I said, "Hey, we got some Portos. We put it down and all this kind of stuff." And somebody brought brownies. They go, "Just lay it on the counter." And Armando comes in. He goes, "Oh yeah, put it on the counter. We'll get some water for you. Whatever you want to do. If you want a cherry, whatever you want. What's going on right now?" Her friend Sonia's in there, and he's just talking a mile a minute. And I looked at him, and I put my hand on his shoulder. I go, "How you doing?" Because I had written him. I said, "Look, you got to take care of yourself. Remember that. No matter what, you got to stay within yourself and do the best you can to self-care." So I put my hand on his shoulder, and I go, "How you doing?" He goes, I'm okay, barely." And I could see just frazzled. And, the mom is there, and she's talking to a friend, and Sonia was in the bedroom with Maki, and so I just fucking hugged Armando, put him in a bear hug. And he started talking to my shoulder, and then he started to cry. He just choked up, and I said, "Listen, you don't have to tell me anything. Just throw some water in your face and stay within yourself here. You got to breathe. You got to take care of yourself." He goes, I am. It's just, it's the worst year of my life. I said, I know. I know. Said some more things, and I held him, and I said, who's in there? He said, "Oh, her friend Sonia. If you want to go in there, that's totally fine. We'll bring you in. But right now I got to get some water. I got to do this." And he was just kind of all over the place, and I understood why. I mean, he was trying to do everything at once, because he didn't know how much time he had left to do anything. So he brought me to the bedroom, and I came in, and there was my friend. And Maki is beautiful. And she would show me, she had photos of herself from costume parties and these fun. She was just a beautiful woman. And I know that losing, she felt she was losing that. She did not, that made her feel awful. And I would, you'd listen, but what do you do? "Oh, you're beautiful." I mean, everybody said all that shit all the time. She's wearing a kerchief because her hair fell out, and she just did not feel right. And I knew it. And we would talk, and that's when we would really talk. She would, you'd get down to it. And, she's a beautiful woman. She actually commissioned a painting from David to paint her as a pinup with, what she looked like before she got sick, with all of her hair and all of her cats in the painting. And David, of course, knocked it out of the fucking park. It's just beautiful. And Maki loved it. Oh my God, did she love it? She got it, and she was just so happy. She loved it so much. So I went into the bedroom, and she's in a hospital bed, and she's frail and tiny, and Sonia is sitting there at the edge of the bed, and she's been her friend forever, and Sonia worked with her at her work, but also Sonia had been a hospice nurse. And so I, went in and said hi to her, and Armando was running at the speed of light, trying to get water and help this and shift that and move a pillow here, and just doing whatever he could just to keep himself from being idle and having to think about what was really happening. And we talked a little, he talked to me and Sonia, and he said it had happened quickly. That up until almost 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks previous to that, or a week and a half, she was fine. And then she went in for another treatment, and it didn't take. And they were going to try to search for answers and figure out what they were going to do, and they weren't sure. And they, the medication. It was that thing where there was another question mark. There was another thing for her to ponder, another thing for her to worry about, another battle to fight, and she didn't want to fight anymore. She had spent 4 years fighting. Constantly fighting, physically and mentally, and doing the best she could, and it looked like that she just didn't want to fight anymore. So what happened was, when they told her they were going to have to do this, she got sick, and I guess she went from hospital to nursing home to hospice in like 2 days. Just went home. And, Armando brought me and he showed me all the meds she had. You ever see, I have a thing that's like a Monday through Friday for my vitamins because I'm a grandfather. Well, Maki had a month's worth of meds. And also, several times a day. There was 2 Saturdays, 2 Fridays, whatever she needed to get. And then there's, painkillers over here, but then this is over here. And I mean, just insanity. And he's like, yeah, I've got a list here. I got to keep track of this. And there's a little alarm bell. And then, he gave Maki a bell to ring when she needed him. And that was cute. But, she had come home on Friday and I see her Saturday. And I mean, she didn't talk. She didn't say hi to me. I saw her and, I sat down and Sonia was there and we sat in the room with her while she breathed. And they'd alternate putting things in her nose to breathe oxygen or to put a mask over her face. And she was so tiny in the bed. I sat at the foot of it. Sonia sat a little further up. And, there's no conversation to be had. Again, Maki was very weak. And I talked to Sonia because, again, like I said, she was a hospice nurse, so I was able to get some insight. And she told me some things, and Armando would pop in, and he was, he's doting on us and doting on her, and every time he would talk to her, he would end with, "I love you. Do you want water?" And she'd nod, or she'd shake her head, or "Do you want water?" And she'd nod, or whatever, and he'd give it to her, and then he'd say, "I love you." After everything. "Do you want a new pillow?" "I love you." Which was, to me, so important. You make it the last thing you say always, just in case. And he was all over. And then I looked at him and I go, he's like, "I think I need to make a phone call." And I looked at him and I go, "We got this." I go, "Sonia and I are here. If anything crazy happens, we'll let you know. But go do what you got to do." Because he was getting texted and called the whole fucking time. Because again, I guess on Friday, there was a friend of hers who was like, "Well, I can fly in next month." And Armando's like, "That probably isn't a good idea." And then the person came that night and stayed till like 1 a.m. or midnight or something like that. And he was like, "Yeah, so that person was here." And I didn't want to be that guy. I don't want to be, this is about Armando and her parents and Maki. And I love Maki. She's my friend. And I wanted to come and see her. But also at the same time, I don't want to be a burden for Armando, and I don't want to be in the way. You're there to see someone that meant something to you and pay respects and do what you can to provide comfort and help. So Sonia and I were there, and then they had to shift the oxygen mask. She had it in her nose. I'd been there for about an hour and a half at this point. And Sonia, they wanted to take the one out of her nose and then put the mask around her face because it was easier to see that she was breathing. And I mean, dudes, she had an oxygen pump. She had a bed thing that kind of made the mattress ripple so she didn't lay in one spot for too long and get bed sores. It kept the circulation moving. They had converted this small bedroom into a de facto hospital room. And also Armando, he opened the window and he had the fan on because he said the heat coming off the oxygen pump. And I felt that it was really warm. He goes, "I made the mistake of having the window closed and turned the fan off. I closed the door. I came in here and felt like a fucking sauna." I'm like, "Oh, dude, that's brutal." So he was very, you're learning everything on the fly, and he's doing what he can to manage it and keep Maki as comfortable as possible. and constantly let her know that she was loved. So they were switching the mask out, and he had to move the bed. So he said, "Hey, can we move the bed here?" I said, "What do you need me to do?" He goes, "Nothing, just move out of the way. I can do this." He shifted that, and as he was switching the mask, Maki would sit up, and he switches the mask, and she looked down, and she finally looked up at me. I was at the foot of the bed, and she looked at me, and I just waved, like not like a hi, but just, you know, that thing where you just do your little your fingers. You just bend your fingers and kind of wave. I did that. She looked at me and I just winked at her and waved, and she smiled as best she could and waved back. And Armando goes, "Oh!" He goes, "She waved at you." I said, "She did. I waved at her first." And he goes, "Yeah, but she doesn't wave. She hasn't waved at anybody. That's you should feel very special." I go, "I do. Thank you." And he goes, "Oh, that's so great." He goes, "You see Mike?" And he leaned forward to talk to her. He goes, "You saw Mike? Okay, you waved at Mike." And he was very happy. And I don't know if it gave him some hope that she was still cognizant of what was going on. And because she tried to talk, he would say, "I love you," and she'd say it back. She'd say it back as best she could. So she waved at me, and I winked at her. I got a little smile, and Sonia left, and I stayed. And Armando was like, "Are you okay in here by yourself? Because I have a lot of things to." I said, "Dude, take care of whatever you need." I said, "If something that I can't handle comes up, I'll find you, but we're good." And so then it was me and her in the room, and I'd ask if she wanted water, and she did. So I'd hold it for her, and she'd put the straw in her mouth and sip it. And I don't know if she knew. I mean, Armando said she was cognizant and she knew who I was. She knew who everybody was, but she just couldn't reflect that in what she said back. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I got to sit with her and talk to her. And I wanted to talk because I felt that was the one connection she and I always had, was my voice. And I thought, even if she can't open her eyes, she can't focus, even if she just lays there, she can hear me. Just like she heard me during her chemo, when she would save me for her chemo. Now I'm there, I'm in person, I can talk. I can do the one thing that I know she always counted on. So I sat at the side of the bed, and I stroked her hair, and I held her hand, and I told her about fancy vegetables, and I told her about hunting legendary animals. And I told her she was right about that game and how special it was. And I told her we would get to play together. And I told her how much Armando loved her, and how he was doing everything he could to make her comfortable and make sure she was fine. And he was contacting everybody, and he was just a traffic cop on top of everything else. Not only a loving partner, and he told me that they were going to get married. They had become engaged a month before this happened. And he took me in the backyard. They were going to get married in her parents' yard because her mom is an amazing gardener and just has a beautiful garden in the back. And there was a transom, and they had planned it out. That's where they were going to get married. And he could barely get through telling me. And she had the ring on in bed. And I told her about riding horses and playing the game, and how I couldn't wait to be online and play with her if she ever wanted to play with me. And I did whatever I could to just make it normal for both of us. And so I sat with her I was probably alone with her for just like 20 minutes. And then Armando would pop in, and he would dote on her, and he would he'd rub her legs, and he'd fix her blanket, and he'd fix her pillows, and he would do stuff to do stuff, and I understood why. I completely understood why. And Sonia, I told you, eventually she left, and another friend came by. I forget her name, but she came in a house of fire. Telling Maki, I love you. Oh my God, I love you. Please, you can't leave. I love you. And then she brought out a book and she started to read the book to her. And, so I gave her the chair that was close to Maki's head, because I had it for a good 20 minutes to a half hour of being able to talk to her and tell her how much I enjoyed being there for Maki Mondays, and how happy I was that she chose me to be a part of her life. And then this woman showed up, and she read. She was reading a book out loud, and then she'd look at me for approval, and it was just, and I again, like I said, you cannot tell people how to grieve. And this girl was wearing it on her fucking sleeve, and I got it again. And she'd known Maki her entire fucking life. So I sat and just rubbed Maki's leg while this girl talked to her and stroked her hair and told her how beautiful she was, and told her she looked forward to talking to Maki on the other side, because she had found out a way to talk to people on the other side, because she was talking to her dad every day. And I'm just going, oh boy, all right. But again, people grieve the way they grieve. And Armando would pop in and he'd say, how are we? I'd say, we're good. And then there's always that awkward thing that Maki had to use the bathroom. So I'm like getting myself fucking scarce and running the fuck out of there. I'm like, nah, no, that's not, I'm not going to be here for that, because I thought he was going to have to help her to the room, but instead he had a chair, and once he brought the chair, and I go, all right, I'm going to go in the living room now. I'm going to be so, I've had to go through that myself in the hospital. I get it. So, he and the other girl took care of Maki, and I said, come get me whenever. And I went up talking to her mom a little bit, and I talked to her dad, and we talked about baked goods, because he's like, he goes, you can come over anytime you want. I said, absolutely, I'm happy to bring it, and that was great. And then I popped back in, and I was there, pretty much the whole afternoon on Saturday. And that girl was reading, and then another girl was waiting, and I went, it's time to go. You can come back, whatever you got to do here, but it's just a never-ending stream of people, and rightfully so, because Maki was loved by so many people, and they all needed to have their half hour in her ear like I had. So I told Armando I was going to take off, and I leaned in on Maki, and Armando took her friend and started talking to her so I could have a minute, and I told her I loved her, and I thanked her again, and I told her to stay as strong as she could, and then I hugged her, and I left. I walked out with Armando. We got on the porch again, and I said, hey, I know you have so many people coming and going. And he goes, well, look, if you want to come back, you come back whenever you want. He goes, obviously. And I said, all right. I said, I won't come tomorrow, because because I knew for sure he had like 8 or 9 people coming on Sunday. I said, look, I can come Monday or Tuesday. I said, you tell me what works best. I said, for sure Tuesday. I go, no later. I go, but I can come back Monday. I go, you got to tell me, though. I go, I'm going to leave this in your court. I understand the parents and you. I go, this is their house. I don't want to be constantly hanging out and lurking. And he goes, no, it's fine. She loved you. I said, well, I loved her. And he said, yeah, no, you were a huge part of her life for forever, for a very long time. And since I've been around. I said, yeah, I know. I'm proud of that. And then I told him, look, you got to take care of yourself. I said, always throw water in your face, walk out and let the wind hit you. And, drink a lot of water and do what you can to take care of yourself. I said, don't run yourself ragged here. I said, and you know, I know you got a good cop and bad cop people going in and out of the room. I said, but you do everything you can to keep her safe and comfortable. He goes, of course, absolutely. And I knew he would. But at that point, what do you say? What do you say? So I gave him a hug, you know, and he broke down again, you know, and I just told him, hey, look, man, you're doing the best job you can. You're doing the best job of doing the worst job in the world. And he, you know, we talked some more, and I said, all right, man, definitely Tuesday, but probably Monday. Whatever you got, you tell me. Keep me in the loop here. And he said, okay. And I got in my car and I drove home. And sobbed, you know, on the way to the car, leaving him on the porch, leaving him on his prospective mother and father-in-law's porch as his fiancée lay dying in a small bedroom, not fitting of the task. And I got in my car and I was overwhelmed. I cried. All the stuff from Friday with Brody hit me, and all the stuff that I had just gone through, and Maki, who, you know, I knew Brody. I was friends with Brody, but I can't sell it short. I was friends with both of them. Different kinds of friends. Both had been a part of my life since I started this show, certainly. Brody before that, because I started doing stand-up, and I would see him, you know, when I got here in 97. He came from Seattle. And so I left. I got home, and Saturday I stayed up really late. I didn't stream. Because I was gonna go home and I was gonna go online. You know, I stream every Tuesday through Sunday, and Saturday, man, I didn't fucking want to. I didn't want to play games. I didn't want to do anything. But you know what I did? I cleaned my house. I vacuumed. I cleaned out my spice cabinet because I want to start cooking. You know, so I ordered fresh spices online. I threw away old spices that expired in 2009. I took a fucking power washer to my house. Broke down a fuck ton of boxes and redid my fucking linen closet. Just anything. Busy work. With wireless earbuds in my head, walking around listening to music, losing myself and crying. Just finding that I would feel low at the weirdest moments. It would just fucking strike me. Like when I saw Graham post the thing about the Cubs, that was that night, and I fucking had to sit down and put my head in my hands. It just was just fucking raw. And again, I certainly had a much more personal relationship with Maki. The Brody thing hit me really hard. But I think I'm just susceptible to being hit hard these days. Because I could be either of those people. I'm 51. Who knows? Who has any idea? You know, I don't take care of, certainly I don't take the best care of myself. So, I mean, anything could fucking come up. And it's that age, like, truthfully, Sunday, I started to get a pain in my back. Now, I lift 3 times a week, you know, and also I've told you, like, I'll be driving an Uber and my leg will feel bad. I'm like, what the fuck's that? Well, it's because my leg is in that position for 8, 9, 10 hours. Well, then, like, my lat started to hurt underneath my right shoulder blade. And I'm like, well, that's weird. That's new. And then I wondered, well, what if there's a mass? What if there's something in there that I can't get to? Because it felt weird. Like it wasn't like I pulled a muscle and I wasn't doing anything. All of a sudden, it just started to be painful. And so I worried about that. And I worried about Maki, and I worried about going back to see her on Monday, and Saturday night was just strange. I went and buried myself in stuff about Brody online, and I just felt terrible. Because again, to see a light extinguished, to see joy stolen from people, there's not enough of it in this world, and for it to be gone is wrong. So Saturday was bad, Spent the afternoon there, came home and just drifted around. Like I said, cleaned out my entire fucking apartment and figured out what I could do. Rearranged some deck chairs on the Titanic, listened to the band, watched for the iceberg. And, I went to bed super late on Saturday, and then I was going to stream on Sunday. And I wasn't sure, because I had finished God of War, and I had played it, like I said, on Friday, and I was getting constantly beat up by a Valkyrie. It was just fucking not fun, because again, I had lost my friend, and I didn't know what to do, and I just wasn't having a good time. So I was like, well, I can pick it back up on Sunday if I have to. And because I wasn't sure what I was going to play, and then I was debating whether I should play Red Dead or not. And then I got a text from Armando at 11:30 Sunday morning. And he said, Mike, I just wanted you to know that she's at peace. And so I lost my friend Maki Cook Ruiz. Everyone lost their friend Maki Cook Ruiz. Armando lost his fiancée, Maki Cook Ruiz. Her parents lost a daughter, Maki Cook Ruiz, on Sunday morning at 11:30. And I texted him back how much he was loved and how sorry I was for him, and if he needed me for anything, to let me know. And then that day, I went online, and my mind was made up for me, and I went and played Red Dead Redemption 2. And as emotionally weird as my weekend was, I found catharsis. And I had a fucking blast. And I caught 5 legendary fish. And I killed a legendary cougar. And there was a point where I found a horse. And in the game, you name your horses. And, I considered naming it Maki. And then I thought, this is the dumbest thing you've ever thought. I was like, well, maybe this would be like a fun tribute. And I mean, then people would say why, and it would be a thing because there's people in the chat room. And I thought, well, this would be, and then I went, what are you doing, man? This is like when people write on Facebook when some actor dies and they're like, oh my God, it means the world to me. It's like, this is the most hollow of tributes. And I said, you know what? Don't do that, dude. That is the complete epitome of performative grief. So we named it Cantaloupe because it has to come from the show. And I didn't want to stop playing because I know how much it meant to her and how much she loved it. And playing it made me think of playing with her and the fact that she was gone. And I never got the opportunity. And so, you know what? Sunday, I streamed for 9.5 hours. Because I was having fun, because I was losing myself, because I was remembering my friend, and because also I was avoiding the world. If I had a controller in my hand and I was killing Legendary Cougar or getting killed by him or laughing about it, I didn't have to go and look at photos of my friend who I'd lost, or see video clips of my other friend who I'd lost. So, this was a show I didn't want to do. I don't think it's a show anybody would want to do. And initially, I thought I was going to get in here and talk a little bit about my friends, and then I was going to play the episode I had with Maki. When I started to do Mondays with Maki and Maki Mondays, I'd go there, and then, I pitched her. I was like, do you want me to record at your place? She's like, oh my God, I would love that. If you would do that, that'd be amazing. So I did record a show at her place last year. And it was she was in the room, and I did it. I think I almost did like 3 hours. And I loved it. I thought I was fucking funny as hell. It's one of my favorite shows from that year. And it's called Judy with the Speedboat. Now, I look up, and I remember that show was almost 3 hours long, and I see that I've already, I don't know where the time has gone here. I thought I would talk a little bit about my friends, then I would put this episode that I did at Maki's house in as a tribute. But in reality, I see that that's not going to be feasible, because then you're going to get a podcast that's 5.5 hours long, or 5 hours and whatever the fuck, and you're going to go, Jesus Christ, we can't, what, has Mike gone mad? Yeah, a little. So I won't add that. In the next couple days, I may upload it separately. But in the next few days, I may also just cry and remember my friend, and then remember my other friend, and remember the weekend and the weird 5 days that I don't wish on anybody. You guys can get me at mike@MikeSchmidtComedy.com. You guys can be my friend at Facebook.com/the40year-old-boy. You guys can follow me at Twitter.com/the40year-old-boy. I'm also available at Instagram and Snapchat at Mike40YOB. And I'm on Twitch every week, every Tuesday through Sunday, although that's going to be amended because streaming every day is turning into a thing. And I think I got to throttle it down a little bit. So I'm on Twitch. Twitch.com/ oops, let me take that back. Twitch.tv/the40year-old-boy. You can find me there. And watch the live streams, follow if you can, because then you'll be notified when I go on live, because the schedule's going to be changing, ever changing. We've got the YouTube channel. Go check that out. And please remember, Ryan Dirks does all of the web stuff for this show. You can find him at Facebook.com/Ryan Dirks. And our good friend David Hernandez has handled art and music for this show. You can be his friend at Facebook.com/DavidMexHernandez. You can go ahead and check out his work online at his website, artbydmh.com. That's ARTBYDMH.com. If you want him to do work for you, you want to commission a painting like our friend Maki did. Maki Cook Ruiz hired our friend David, and he painted her as a burlesque pinup with her cats. It's a beautiful painting because Mex does beautiful work. And Maki was a beautiful woman. So you can't go wrong with that combination. If you want to do the same, you can hire David. Like I said, you can observe his work at artbydmh.com, and you can contact him at facebook.com/DavidMexHernandez. Write him a note in Messenger. He works in oils. He works in watercolors. He's a painter. He's everything. He's a Renaissance man. He does music. He does everything you could possibly want him to do. I mean, he's not going to sell you music. I don't think he'll do a song for you, but he certainly will do a painting for you. What do you want to commission him to do something? He's your guy. So find him at artbydmh.com. Check out all of his work there. And then go find him at facebook.com/DavidMexHernandez. And I don't know how to end this show. I don't. Playing raucous music on the way out doesn't seem to make sense. And I at this very moment, again, I don't know what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go find an appropriate song recorded by my friend David, and something that I think fits. And I will let him take me and you and my friends Brody and Maki home.
May the good Lord be with you down every road you roam, and may sunshine and happiness surround you when you're far from home, and may you grow to be proud, dignified and true, and do unto others as you'd have done to you. Be courageous and be brave, and in my heart you'll always stay forever young, forever young, forever young, forever young. May good fortune be with you, may your guiding light be strong. Build a stairway to heaven with a prince or a vagabond, and may you never love in vain, and in my heart you will remain forever young, forever young, forever young, forever young, forever young, forever young. And when you finally fly away, I'll be hoping